There is one fruit that has been sitting quietly in your kitchen. You have eaten it for years, possibly decades, believing it was helping your heart, supporting your health, and giving your body the fuel it needed to stay strong. And yet, for men over 60, that fruit may be doing something very different. It may be slowly suppressing your testosterone, degrading your blood vessel function, and quietly eroding the very physiological systems that make erections possible. I know that is a confronting statement. I am a physician and a scientist. I do not make confronting statements without clinical and biochemical evidence to back them up. But this is exactly the kind of information that gets lost in the gap between what the food industry markets to the general population and what the research says about aging male physiology specifically. My name is Dr. William Lee. I have spent over 30 years studying the biology of how what we eat interacts with our vascular systems, our hormonal architecture, and our capacity to heal. Much of my career has focused on angiogenesis, how blood vessels grow, how they function, and how bioactive food compounds can either protect or undermine that function. And in that work, I have come to understand something that most men over 60 are never told. Not all fruits are neutral for your body at this stage of life. Some are actively working against you. In this conversation, I want to walk you through 4 fruits that I advise men over 60 to significantly reduce or eliminate, and 4 fruits that the evidence consistently identifies as genuinely protective for testosterone, circulation, and erectile health. I will give you the mechanisms, not just the conclusions. Because when you understand why something affects your body, you are far more likely to act on it and far more equipped to make intelligent decisions going forward. Stay with me through to the end, because the final fruit I will share has produced some of the most striking clinical improvements I have observed in men who believe their best years were behind them. Before we go further, if you are a man over 60 who is serious about reclaiming your energy, vascular health, and confidence, subscribe now and turn on the notification bell. I create this content specifically for men who want evidence-based guidance, not guesswork. And if this subject speaks to your experience, drop a 1 in the comments. If it doesn't land for you, drop a 0. That feedback helps me calibrate what serves you best. Let's begin with the first fruit to reconsider. It may surprise you because it is one most men eat without a second thought. 1. Grapes. A hidden endocrine disruptor for aging men, grapes have a strong public health reputation. They contain resveratrol, a polyphenol that has been studied for its cardiovascular and anti-aging properties. They are associated with Mediterranean diets. They appear in essentially every list of antioxidant-rich foods. So why am I raising concerns about them for men over 60? The answer lies not in the grape itself, but in how grapes are commercially produced and in a class of chemicals that the food industry does not advertise on the label. Grapes are consistently among the most heavily pesticide-contaminated produce items available in commercial agriculture. The Environmental Working Group has listed grapes on its Dirty Dozen list for years, meaning that even after washing, conventional grapes carry measurable residues of multiple pesticide compounds. Here is why that matters for aging male biology specifically. A significant subset of the pesticides commonly used on conventional grapes are classified as xenoestrogens, synthetic chemical compounds that structurally mimic estrogen and bind to estrogen receptors in the male body. When these compounds accumulate in your system, they create a hormonal environment that directly competes with testosterone. The mechanism is well documented. Xenoestrogen exposure activates estrogen signaling pathways, which in turn suppresses the hypothalamic pituitary signaling that drives testosterone production. The result over time is an elevated estrogen to testosterone ratio, manifesting as reduced libido, increased abdominal adiposity, potential prostate inflammation, and progressively weaker erectile response. I had a patient, I will call him Alan, 67 years old, who had been eating 2 generous handfuls of conventional grapes daily for years, under the impression he was supporting his cardiovascular health. His testosterone levels were low for his age, his erections had become unreliable, and he was experiencing persistent fatigue. When we removed conventional grapes from his diet and replaced them with fruits I will describe shortly, his morning erectile function began returning within 3 weeks. His energy improved, his confidence shifted perceptibly. Was it solely the grapes? Likely not in isolation. But for a man with already declining testosterone, even a modest sustained xenoestrogen load can tip the balance meaningfully. My guidance: if you enjoy grapes, switch to certified organic and consume them in moderation. And eliminate grape juice entirely. It concentrates both the sugars and any residual chemical burden without the protective fiber of the whole fruit. 2. Canned fruit cocktails. Processed sugar in nutritional disguise, they come in small cups. They are soft, colorful, and convenient. For many men over 60, canned fruit cocktails have become a breakfast staple. Sometimes eaten alongside morning medications, sometimes viewed as a lighter alternative to heavier processed foods. The problem is not that they contain fruit. The problem is what surrounds that fruit and what processing has done to it. Most commercially canned fruit cocktails are packed in high fructose corn syrup or concentrated fruit juice, both of which deliver a rapid concentrated glucose load directly into the bloodstream. When you eat these on an empty stomach, which is typically when breakfast foods are consumed, you generate a sharp insulin spike. And insulin, when chronically elevated, has a direct suppressive effect on testosterone production through multiple pathways, globulin and enhanced aromatase activity, which converts testosterone to estrogen. High fructose corn syrup specifically has been associated in research literature with elevated triglycerides, hepatic fat accumulation, increased estrogen production via adipose tissue, and reduced free testosterone. A constellation of metabolic effects that is precisely the wrong direction for a man over 60 trying to protect his hormonal environment. Beyond the hormonal impact, the acute sugar surge from canned fruit cocktails triggers an inflammatory cascade that damages endothelial function, the very cellular machinery responsible for nitric oxide production and, by extension, healthy erectile response. When your endothelium is inflamed and dysfunctional, nitric oxide signaling fails. Blood vessels cannot dilate adequately. Circulation to erectile tissue is insufficient. I had a patient, Raymond, 72, who had eaten these fruit cups daily for more than a decade, genuinely believing they were a healthy dietary choice. He came to me presenting with fatigue, cognitive fog, and complete loss of sexual motivation. When we replaced the canned fruit with the whole fruits I will describe in the second half of this conversation, the changes were meaningful within weeks. Do not be misled by light syrup or no sugar added labeling. The processing itself, the heat treatment, the extended shelf storage, the loss of fiber and enzymatic activity has already stripped much of the biological value from the fruit and left you with a product that behaves more like a glucose delivery system than nutrition. 3. Bananas. The insulin spike and the testosterone suppression cycle, this one requires nuance because bananas are not universally harmful and they do contain genuinely useful nutrients, potassium, vitamin B6, magnesium. I'm not arguing they are toxic. I am arguing that for men over 60 who are already dealing with declining testosterone, insulin sensitivity changes, and compromised vascular function, the glycemic profile of bananas, particularly overripe ones, creates a pattern of metabolic disruption that can meaningfully worsen their situation. Here is the biochemistry. A ripe banana has a glycemic index in the range of 51 to 62, and a glycemic load that reflects its significant simple sugar content. Overripe bananas, the ones most people actually prefer to eat because they are sweeter and softer, have an even higher glycemic impact. When you eat an overripe banana, particularly in the morning or without other foods that would blunt the glucose response, you generate a rapid insulin spike. Chronically repeated insulin spikes in the context of aging male physiology drive two hormonal problems simultaneously. First, elevated insulin promotes aromatase activity in adipose tissue, accelerating the conversion of testosterone to estrogen. Second, insulin resistance, which develops progressively with repeated high glycemic load exposures, is independently associated with lower free testosterone and higher sex hormone-binding globulin. Beyond the insulin mechanism, bananas are high in tryptophan, the amino acid precursor to serotonin. While serotonin has important mood-regulating functions, elevated serotonin in the context of sexual response is often inhibitory. This is the same mechanism responsible for the sexual side effects commonly reported with serotonergic antidepressants. Several of my patients have reported exactly this: a post-banana breakfast flatness that shows up as reduced motivation, emotional blunting, and diminished sexual interest. If you are over 60 and eating bananas daily while experiencing softer erections, reduced morning firmness, or low drive, This is a variable worth eliminating systematically to see how your body responds. If you choose to continue eating them, opt for less ripe bananas. The slightly green variety has a meaningfully lower glycemic impact and a higher resistant starch content, which actually feeds beneficial gut bacteria. 4. Dried fruits. Concentrated sugar with a nutritional halo, dried fruits occupy an interesting psychological space in how people think about healthy eating. They feel virtuous. They are fruit after all, just in a more shelf-stable form. Men who are trying to move away from processed sweets often reach for dates, raisins, or dried apricots as what they believe is a smarter alternative. The problem is that drying fruit does not just remove water, it concentrates everything else, including the sugars, while simultaneously reducing the fiber density that would otherwise moderate absorption. A single cup of raisins contains more sugar than a standard can of soda. Without the fiber buffering that exists in the whole fresh grape, that sugar hits the bloodstream rapidly and aggressively. The downstream hormonal consequences follow the same pathway I described with bananas and canned fruit, but with even greater intensity because the concentration is higher. Insulin spikes, aromatase activity increases, free testosterone drops. And if this is happening before sleep, as it does for many men who snack on dates in the evening, the consequences extend further. Blood sugar elevation through the night suppresses the overnight growth hormone pulse and disrupts the testosterone synthesis that should be occurring during deep sleep. There is also a micronutrient concern that receives very little attention. Many commercially packaged dried fruits are coated in vegetable oils to prevent clumping and treated with sulfite preservatives to maintain color. These additives have been associated in research with interference in zinc absorption. Zinc is not an optional micronutrient for male reproductive health. It is directly involved in testosterone synthesis, serves as a cofactor for enzymes throughout the steroidogenic pathway, and supports the structural integrity of sperm. Men over 60 are already at elevated risk of zinc insufficiency. Anything that further compromises zinc bioavailability is moving in the wrong direction. If you enjoy the sweetness of dried fruit, I understand the appeal. But in the context of protecting testosterone, vascular health, and erectile function, the glycemic and micronutrient impact makes them a poor daily choice for aging men. Fresh whole fruit is almost always the biologically superior option. Now, with the 4 fruits to reduce firmly established, let us turn to the evidence for what to eat instead, because this is where the conversation becomes genuinely exciting. 1. Pomegranate. The vascular king. If I were permitted to recommend only one fruit to every man over 60 I work with, it would be pomegranate. Not because it is exotic or expensive or rare, but because the published evidence for its effects on male vascular health and testosterone is among the strongest I have seen for any single food compound. The bioactive compounds in pomegranate, primarily punicalagins and ellagic acid, are extraordinarily potent antioxidants. Their primary mechanism of action in the context of male health is the protection and restoration of endothelial function. The endothelium, as I mentioned earlier, is the cellular lining of blood vessels. When it is healthy, it produces nitric oxide efficiently. When it is damaged by oxidative stress and inflammation, which occurs progressively with age, nitric oxide production falls. Vessels stiffen and blood flow to erectile tissue becomes compromised. Pomegranate intervenes directly at this level. Its antioxidant compounds reduce the oxidative burden on endothelial cells, supporting their capacity to produce nitric oxide and maintain vascular flexibility. A well-designed clinical study published in the International Journal of Impotence Research found that men who consumed pomegranate juice daily showed significant improvements in erectile function scores compared to placebo. A separate study demonstrated measurable increases in salivary testosterone following consistent pomegranate consumption over several weeks. These are not trivial findings. They are mechanistically coherent with what we understand about pomegranate's antioxidant and hormonal biology. I have had men in their late 60s come into my office completely demoralized by their experience of erectile decline. We restructured their diet, introduced real pomegranate, either a half cup of fresh seeds or a small glass of 100% pure pomegranate juice with no added sugar, and within 30 days, multiple men reported firmer erections, improved morning responses, and a qualitative sense of physical energy that they had stopped expecting to feel. Choose fresh seeds or pure juice. Avoid pomegranate-flavored beverages or blends. The dilution and added sugars negate the benefit. 2. Kiwi testosterone protection, A&D cortisol control kiwi, is consistently underestimated in the context of men's health, and I consider that a significant oversight in most dietary guidance for aging men. The most immediately recognizable benefit of kiwi is its extraordinary vitamin C density, gram for gram. Kiwi contains more vitamin C than an orange. And vitamin C, in the context of male reproductive biology, is not merely an immune nutrient, it is a direct protector of Leydig cells, the testicular cells responsible for testosterone synthesis. Oxidative stress damages Leydig cells progressively with age, reducing their synthetic capacity and contributing to the natural decline in testosterone that men experience from their mid-30s onward. Vitamin C neutralizes the free radicals that drive this damage, helping to preserve the structural and functional integrity of the cells your testosterone depends on. Kiwi also contains actinidin, a proteolytic enzyme that enhances protein digestion and nutrient absorption. This matters clinically because many men over 60 experience a gradual decline in digestive enzyme production, meaning that even a well-constructed diet may not be delivering adequate bioavailable zinc, magnesium, and other minerals essential to testosterone production and erectile health. Kiwi helps bridge that absorption gap. Perhaps most significantly for the hormonal conversation, research has demonstrated that regular kiwi consumption reduces cortisol levels. A study conducted in Japan found that men who ate 2 kiwis daily over several weeks showed measurable reductions in blood pressure, improvements in sleep quality, and lower indicators of oxidative stress. All of these effects support the hormonal environment that testosterone requires to thrive because cortisol and testosterone operate in competition, and anything that reduces chronic cortisol burden allows testosterone to rise naturally. Eat the whole fruit, skin included. The skin is edible, rich in fiber, and contains additional antioxidant compounds. Rinse well or buy organic. If the texture of the skin is a barrier, the flesh alone still delivers substantial benefit. 3. Watermelon. Nature's nitric oxide precursor watermelon has been nicknamed nature's Viagra in the popular press. And while I am cautious about hyperbole in clinical contexts, the underlying mechanism that earned it that comparison is genuinely well supported. Watermelon is exceptionally rich in L-citrulline, a non-essential amino acid that is converted by the kidneys to L-arginine. L-arginine is then used by endothelial cells as the primary substrate for nitric oxide synthase, the enzyme that produces nitric oxide. More L-arginine availability means greater potential for nitric oxide production, which means better vasodilatation, improved blood flow, and stronger erectile response. This is the same fundamental pathway that PDE5 inhibitors like sildenafil target, but they work downstream by preventing nitric oxide breakdown. L-citrulline from watermelon works upstream by increasing nitric oxide production at the source. The clinical studies on L-citrulline supplementation specifically in erectile function have shown genuine improvements in erectile hardness scores in men with mild to moderate dysfunction. And watermelon is one of the densest natural dietary sources available. The additional advantage watermelon offers is hydration. Erectile tissue is highly sensitive to hydration status, and mild chronic dehydration, which is extremely common in older men who experience a blunted thirst response with age, can meaningfully reduce vascular blood volume and circulatory efficiency. Watermelon is over 90% water, making it an excellent vehicle for both the L-citrulline benefit and improved systemic hydration simultaneously. An important detail, the white rind just beneath the outer green skin actually contains the highest concentration of L-citrulline in the whole fruit. Most people discard it. If you are blending watermelon, include the rind. If you are eating it fresh, do not trim it completely away. Eat fresh watermelon rather than commercial watermelon juice, which typically contains added sugar, or blend it yourself. Adding a small amount of fresh ginger enhances the vasodilator effect through complementary mechanisms. 4. Blueberries. Vascular protection and hormonal defense. Small, dark, and consistently undervalued by men who associate serious health foods with more dramatic presentations, blueberries are, in my assessment, one of the most clinically significant fruits available to men over 60. Their primary bioactive compounds are anthocyanins, a class of flavonoid pigments responsible for the deep blue-purple color and for a remarkable range of biological activities in the human body. Anthocyanins are among the most potent natural anti-inflammatory and antioxidant compounds identified in food science research. In the context of male vascular and hormonal health, their effects operate across multiple simultaneous pathways. First, they protect the endothelium. Anthocyanins have been shown in multiple studies to reduce markers of endothelial inflammation, improve vascular flexibility, and support nitric oxide bioavailability. The same foundational mechanism that pomegranate and watermelon address through different chemical pathways. A diet that includes multiple foods supporting endothelial health from different angles creates a more robust protective effect than any single intervention. Second, blueberries improve insulin sensitivity. This is directly relevant to testosterone because, as I have described throughout this conversation, chronic insulin resistance is one of the most significant drivers of testosterone suppression and estrogen elevation in aging men. Anthocyanins enhance glucose transporter activity and reduce inflammatory signaling in insulin-responsive tissues, helping to keep the metabolic environment more favorable for hormonal health. Third, blueberries support cognitive function, and this matters more to erectile health than most men realize. Sexual function is not purely a peripheral vascular event. It is substantially driven by central nervous system activity, including dopaminergic signaling, prefrontal engagement, and the emotional and anticipatory aspects of desire. Blueberry anthocyanins have been shown to improve cerebral blood flow, support neurogenesis in the hippocampus, and reduce cognitive inflammation, effects that translate to sharper mental focus, improved mood, and greater emotional presence. All of these influence sexual function in ways that purely vascular approaches miss. Half a cup of fresh blueberries in the morning, in Greek yogurt, in a smoothie, or simply on their own is a small, inexpensive, and sustainable daily habit. Their glycemic impact is low, their fiber content is meaningful, and their anthocyanin concentration is sufficient to produce measurable biological effects with consistent use. These are not supplements. They are not pharmaceutical compounds. They are whole foods doing what food can do when we choose with intelligence. Conclusion: precision matters. And so does consistency. Let me bring this together because the principle underlying everything I have shared today is more important than any individual fruit. The human body over 60 is not simply an older version of the body at 30. Its hormonal environment has shifted. Its vascular biology has been shaped by decades of cumulative exposure. Its insulin sensitivity, its endothelial function, its antioxidant capacity, all of these are operating under different conditions than they once were. And that means that dietary choices that were relatively neutral at 40 may be genuinely consequential at 65. Conventional grapes deliver a chronic xenoestrogen burden that disrupts the hormonal balance aging men are already struggling to maintain. Canned fruit cocktails deliver concentrated simple sugars that spike insulin, suppress testosterone, and damage the endothelial function that erections depend on. Overripe bananas repeatedly push the insulin and aromatase pathways in the wrong direction. Dried fruits concentrate sugars, remove fiber, and may interfere with the zinc absorption that is foundational to male reproductive biology. On the other side of that ledger, pomegranate restores nitric oxide production and has clinical evidence for directly improving erectile function and testosterone. Kiwi protects the testicular cells that synthesize testosterone while reducing the cortisol that suppresses it. Watermelon provides L-citrulline, the upstream precursor to the nitric oxide that makes blood flow to erectile tissue possible. Blueberries protect the vascular and neurological infrastructure of sexual health from multiple simultaneous angles. You do not need perfection. You need pattern. Biology responds to what you do consistently, not to what you do occasionally. A half cup of blueberries most mornings, pomegranate seeds or pure pomegranate juice several times a week, fresh watermelon in rotation, and 2 kiwis daily. These are not dramatic interventions. They are intelligent, sustainable choices made with knowledge of what the aging male body actually needs. I have watched men in their late 60s and 70s make these changes and come back to me weeks later, genuinely surprised by what their bodies were still capable of. Not because I gave them something extraordinary, because I gave them accurate information and they acted on it. Your body has not stopped knowing how to function. It has been working with the inputs you have provided it. Change the inputs thoughtfully, consistently, with understanding, and the biology follows. One decision, one meal, one day at a time. Your vitality is not behind you. It is waiting for the right foundation to stand on. Build it.